Hi there, this is Dylan here from Optimum Wealth, and in this video we are going to be discussing how high-performing adults with ADHD rebuild their physique, energy and focus, all built around a 4-pillar system for sustainable change. In this video, we are going to answer the question that we get the most, which is, okay, so you guys do fitness, but what is it you do differently to make it more ADHD specific? We are going to go into so much detail. I'm going to scroll down here on the Miro board so you can see a glimpse of our framework. So yeah, we're going to answer that. This is not just a marketing ploy. There are some serious changes that we've made it to make it more optimal for the ADHD brain so that you function better. All right. So more specifically, what are we going to cover? Why high performers with ADHD keep hitting the same wall over and over again and how to stop doing that. Exactly how our approach to body recomposition is specifically designed for people with ADHD. So body recomposition, that is our bread and butter. We've been doing this for 15 years. We work with an array of different people, typically entrepreneurs, busy professionals who just want to look freaking good, right? Look good naked. And so we do that sustainably. It's all well and good you achieving an awesome transformation, but if you can't keep it up, pointless in my opinion. And so doing it sustainably and then specifically aligning the 4 pillars so that you will feel more regulated. And we're going to get into that in a bit. The next bit is why tackling fitness, medication, therapy, or productivity in isolation keeps you stuck and what it actually takes to bring it all together. And then finally, how getting by with ADHD may be costing you more than you think. So this is for my people who have found out about their ADHD later in life, and you've gone by kind of getting by, right? And so you might be thinking like, why should I do something at this stage in life? And so we're going to explain why the risks and the risks of unmanaged ADHD. So who this is for: business owners and high performing professionals with ADHD who know it's time to take care of their health. Okay, maybe you've had a particularly long season where you're having to grind it away, building your business, building your career, and you've had to put your health on the back burner. Now it's time to look after that vessel that you walk around in. Maybe you've got a family, you've got kids, you need to make sure that you're in good health so you don't become a burden for other people. This is for you. This is for you whether you are diagnosed or undiagnosed. We've got clients on both kind of ends there. If you're diagnosed and you're taking medication, looking after these 4 pillars are going to mean that the medication works better. If you are undiagnosed, or if you are simply diagnosed but have chosen not to use medication, this is how you manage your symptoms of ADHD so that they do not run you, okay? This is for you if you feel like, this is for you if you feel like you know what you're doing, but you feel stuck in paralysis, right? We work with an array of different clients. We've got personal trainers who have us coach them. We've got doctors, physios, people who know what they need to be doing, but they just struggle to do it for themselves, right? They can maybe tell other people to do it. They know exactly what it is they need to do, but they just struggle to actually execute. So if you feel like you fall in that camp, this is the right place. This is also for you if you're not in any kind of, fitness or health environment. You just, you've tried various approaches with fitness, with diets, with training programs, coaches, but nothing has given you sustainable results. Maybe you've had good experiences. Maybe you have kind of, worked with coaches in the past and, a lot of the time you're going to have worked with some really cool people, but you've never had the ADHD element taken into consideration. So this would be great for you. So who we are and some proof. Optimum Wealth is a performance-focused coaching company specializing in individuals with ADHD. This has been built over 15 years of coaching experience with over 500 one-to-one clients. We've worked with British MPs, CEOs of multinationals, and everything in between. So clients regularly lose 10 centimeters plus from their waist in just 16 weeks while improving focus, discipline, and daily habits. So yeah, we've got some, a few screenshots here. This person here started off at just under 92 centimeters, most likely around about 91, maybe just above 91, and finished at 81.6, and the time span would have been 16 weeks. This person here, just under 102 centimeters around the waist, finished at 88 centimeters. Again, started around about kind of September-ish, give or take, and started in September, and then by November, 88 centimeters down the waist. This person, 107 centimeters. This green dot marks the 16-week mark. Continued on and lost more, and just more and more and more of these. Okay, this looks like a big increase, but when you look at this was the end of the 16 weeks. And then we do what's called a refeed so that it's actually sustainable. We don't just kind of leave you, once we're done with the program. We do a very meticulous refeed, meaning that you keep the results. So it went from, I think it was like 71 centimeters and went up to like 73 over a decent amount of time, right? So yeah, so those are some from there. And these are some scale graphs of people's weight as they've come down. So this person, 88 centimeters, so 88, just under 88 kg, finished on 79. This person, 79 kg, finished on 87.5. This person started at 90 kg, finished on 81. And again, a lot of these are over a 16-week span. So, as well as that, we've got, if I come over to my website, loads of transformations, before and afters, a whole wall of transformations. On this wall, you've got, just click onto here, we'll be able to see the same people, but just more angles of each person. So on this wall, we've got an array of people with very different kind of feelings towards exercise, right? Some people really don't like it or are time poor, right? Very, very busy individuals, right? And that's kind of on this end. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, you've got people who are your fitness fanatics, really enjoy exercise, maybe semi-pro athletes sometimes. And so I like to kind of walk through this and explain. You'd think that only people on this end, the fitness fanatic end, are the ones who would see the best results. But we've had some individuals quite far on the opposite end who have seen some pretty good results as well. So I'm going to just walk you through and point out some people all along that kind of line of spectrum. So over here, this person, he was training 3 times a week, sometimes 4 sessions a week. Someone who enjoyed his social life quite a bit, especially as we kind of got started, was quite hesitant to make too many changes to his social life and stuff. And I was like, no problem. Let's focus on what you want to focus on, the training predominantly, and making some adjustments to nutrition. But intrinsically, as we started to go, he started to get, the momentum built up, and he started to see the changes, and therefore he just became a little bit more committed. And in 16 weeks, we saw the results you see here. Then we've got Imogen over here. The space between these two pictures isn't 16 weeks. This is over 2 cycles. One cycle is 16 weeks, so 2 cycles, slightly more than that. And there's a gap. There should be a gap between the 2 16-week cycles. So it's a bit more than the 32 weeks or whatever that it would be if it was just 2 cycles back to back. But incredible transformation here from Imogen. She was training probably 3 times a week, sometimes 4 sessions. And it's worth mentioning that she also had some holidays that came up between her cycles, like that she did with us. And so, you know what holidays can be like, right? Things loosen up, but regardless of that, she came in and saw incredible results. Let me just come out here for a second. This person here is Julia. Julia is an example of someone who could quite honestly not have been further on the left. She had never stepped foot in a gym before we worked together. She was already waking up at 4:30 in the morning, 4:30 in the morning in order to get her normal day in. She had a busy role, corporate role, 3 young kids, just very, very busy individual. And quite honestly, she would struggle to get the 3 sessions a week that we asked for. That is like the minimum viable amount that we can be like, we can get really good results on 3 sessions a week. If you can do more than that, amazing. But 3 sessions a week is what we asked for. She would struggle sometimes. But nonetheless, even though that was the case, she came in and saw incredible results. And the reason for that was because her communication was on point. She would tell us when she was struggling, when she could see that she wasn't going to be able to do something. And that allowed us to do our jobs, right? Tell her when to pull back, when to push forward, what to, stop doing, what to continue doing. And that is what allows us to continue to see results without plateauing. And as you can see here, incredible results. This also was over 2 cycles, so 2 16-week periods. And Dylan's over here, just 12 weeks between those 2 pictures, probably training about 3-ish times a week. This is Imogen as well, so the same person up here, but this is just after her first 16-week cycle. This is Owen. This is an example of someone further on this side of the spectrum. He was training a decent amount, playing semi-pro football, wanted to get leaner, wanted to improve his agility, his speed. So we did that with him. Tanveen over here wanted to build some muscle. That's what we did. Sam, based out of sunny Jamaica, was training 3 times a week. Emre, training, he turned into a bit of a fitness fanatic. Once we got going, he really got stuck in and was training probably like 5 times a week. So really got stuck into it. I'd say he's further on towards the kind of right side of this spectrum I keep referring to. This hasn't loaded for some reason. This is Sebastian. Sebastian came to me. He runs his own restaurant, right? So a business owner, single dad, and he's just like, I just want to be able to show up better for my daughter, show up better as a business owner. I don't really care about the aesthetics too much. I just want to be healthier, have more energy, be stronger. And regardless of that being the primary goal, he still lost 14 kg over 16 weeks. Sorry, 12 weeks here. This is Simon over here. He, as he said himself, unlocked the V and a 6-pack just before his 50th birthday. Had never really been into weight training or anything. And nice physique there. Training probably like 3 to 4 times a week. This person here was training about 4 times a week. Yeah. So this kind of gives you an insight as to, like, you know, the sort of input level of work that's necessary. This is an example of a fitness fanatic. So this individual here was training 5 times a week, and on some days she was doing double sessions, if not triple sometimes. It was crazy. She'd do a gym session, then she'll do some calisthenics, and she might even do some samba as well in there somewhere. So yeah, so a real array of people, as you can see here, like different level of inputs. You don't need to be a fitness fanatic. Again, the minimum viable amount that we ask for is that you can commit to doing 3 sessions a week. But even in some cases when people have struggled to do that, when you know what you're doing, when you know what you should be looking out for, we can still get really good results if you've got the right guidance. And so, yeah, that's some proof that we know what we're doing. So this was founded by me, Dylan. I am an ADHD entrepreneur. I got diagnosed back in 2021. I went through, again, the whole diagnosis process. I tried medication. It didn't really kind of work for me. The side effects weren't worth it for me. And so I solely manage my ADHD symptoms through the 4 health pillars. And you'll be supported by a team of performance coaches trained in this system, many of whom have lived experience. So the way, even down to how we hold our clients accountable, is fairly unique in terms of the health and fitness space. And so we'll get into that when I break down the program. So firstly, I just want to kind of express what our mission is. Like, why is it that Optimum Whealth exists and why it is that we service people who have ADHD? And the reason for that is that we believe most individuals with ADHD are not limited by their ability, but by a lack of structure in their environment, their routine, and their physiology. When your energy, focus, and your recovery aren't supported properly, everything becomes harder than it needs to be. Habits fall apart, consistency drops, and you're left feeling like you're underperforming. So our mission is to help you stop fighting yourself and start operating at the level that you know you're capable of. And by building structure, not just in your life, but in your body and mind. So why do high performers with ADHD keep hitting the same wall? And it's because you're in a bit of a catch-22. The very thing that drives your success, your ambition, your workload, your standards, is also the thing that slowly pulls you away from the habits that keeps you functioning at your best. As your business or career demands more from you, time gets tighter. And if you haven't already built a sustainable approach to training, nutrition, sleep, and your mental habits, those are typically the first things to go. So you tell yourself that you'll come back to them later, but the problem is when those pillars drop, your ADHD symptoms do not stay the same. They get worse. Your focus becomes more scattered, your impulse control weakens, your emotional regulation deteriorates. And now you're trying to operate at a higher level, but you're swimming against the tide. So performance starts to slip. You're still working hard, but you're not operating optimally. You make more mistakes, more inconsistencies, more frustration. And now you're stuck in the loop where the more your performance drops, the more pressure you feel to work harder, and the less space you give yourself to fix the actual problems, right? So at some point, you try to reset. You go all in, you train hard, you eat better, you try to get things back on track, but because there's no real kind of structure and you haven't worked with someone who really knows how to align all of this, it doesn't last. Work ramps up, you fall straight back into the same cycle. And more importantly, back here is you haven't addressed your identity. You haven't really made certain changes to the person you see yourself as. And we'll get more onto that in a bit. Okay? So work ramps up and you fall straight back into the same cycle. This is where a lot of people get stuck for years because you're treating those 4 pillars like something that's optional, something you'll get back to when things calm down. But if you have ADHD, those 4 pillars are not optional. I cannot emphasize this enough. I myself, even though I've been in the health and fitness space for such a long time, I've been an entrepreneur for quite some time, I've had different businesses. Even I have struggled with being like, especially once I moved out of the gym and, being behind laptops for 12 hours, if not more sometimes. And you're just like, I can't spare, 45 minutes, an hour and a half to go to the gym. I'm just going to work more. I need to spend more. And what ends up happening is your mood goes down, your effectiveness at work deteriorates, your focus deteriorates, just everything just starts to slow down and you're just less effective. And I'm sure you probably, resonate with this. It's a mistake that I've had to make and learn from several times, right? I know that I can't sacrifice training, and yet there'll be certain periods where it will come about and I'll sacrifice it, and then things just start to just deteriorate, right? My mental state, I feel more anxious. I'm like, no, just get in a really low mood. And then I start training again and boom, it's like, this time that I was saving, I don't make good use out of it. And so it's the common age-old saying of like, if you've got to chop a tree down, you're better off spending a good amount of time filing down and sharpening the axe so that when you are cutting, doing the work, which is cutting the tree, you're a lot more efficient and effective. And I've lived this many times over. So it just is not optional. It's a non-negotiable for people with ADHD. And we're going to get into why. So people end up addressing one part of the problem when it comes to ADHD, whether it be through medication, therapy, fitness, productivity systems, but rarely are all the pieces brought together. And when they're not, you just typically keep hitting the same wall. You need a system that keeps your exercise, nutrition, sleep, mental performance aligned with the demands of your life and career. And that's exactly what we do here at the ADHD Performance Protocol. So just to break it down, these are the 4 pillars that we look at: exercise, nutrition, sleep, and the mind. We're going to go into some detail as to how we do that. So the first thing that we do in terms of exercise is we do prefrontal cortex activation training. What we mean by that is they've done loads of fMRI scans on people who have ADHD. Right, these are brain imaging studies. They've done hundreds and hundreds of these, and they've also done them on neurotypical brains. And what they found is when kind of crossing these over and looking at the differences, it seems like we tend to get less blood flow going through to the prefrontal cortex, which is, as you probably know, where all your high-level decision-making happens. And so, annoying, right? That for us with ADHD, it seems like we get less blood flow going through to this area. But luckily, exercise is really effective at increasing blood flow to the brain and to the prefrontal cortex. However, the benefits that exercise kind of bring in this regard was considered acute and not chronic, which means that they last a number of hours, not days and weeks from a single input. So ever since we started working solely with people who have ADHD, down to the timing is a variable we control for, right? As well as that, the type of exercise. So they've studied the different types of exercises that exist and which are more effective at kind of increasing blood flow to the brain and prefrontal cortex. So we take that into account when we're designing a program. And we also introduce something called sensory motor training, which is the next thing here. Sensory motor training is a type of exercise that stimulates the cerebellum, and that's another part of the back of the brain that's in charge of your coordination, your motor skills, and your balance. And studies have shown that by doing exercise that stimulate this part of the brain, it improves executive functioning, which again is something that people with ADHD struggle with. It's actually also used in ADHD clinics. It's used in clinics that work with people who are going into dementia, Alzheimer's, to slow down their cognitive kind of decay. In terms of nutrition, so again, we're constantly striving towards 2 goals. One component is your fitness goal. Typically, most of our clients, they want body recomposition, which is losing body fat, building muscle, toning essentially. So there's that component. And then the second component is helping you feel more regulated. So when it comes to body recomposition, 80% of the work will be down to the nutrition, right? Even if you're eating healthy, if you do not have the composition that you want, we need to look at your nutrition. The way we address that is by putting you on a very, very tailored meal plan. This is very important so that it feels sustainable and that you actually stick with this long term, is making it similar to the way that you like to eat. Obviously, if you're someone who's eating, burgers and pizzas 7 days a week, we're going to have to make more changes than someone that isn't. But also just expecting you to cut out all the joys from life isn't feasible or sustainable. And so we will tell you how to make room for certain things without messing up your results and just making it sustainable again. So with meal plans, we give you a nice tailored meal plan, every component of it. So we have clients who eat 2 meals a day, for example, right through to clients who eat 5-6 meals a day. We have clients who are vegan, vegetarian. We have clients who hate cooking and don't have a lot of time, through to clients who love cooking and have a lot of time, right? And so the recipes will reflect that. We can make them super short and condensed if you fall here, or if you fall on the other end, we can make them a lot more complex and add a lot more variety. For example, we have some clients who would rather eat the same breakfast 7 days a week, the same lunch 7 days a week, right, without alternating much. And we have other clients who hate eating the same meals 2 days in a row, and so they have a lot more variety. They understand that they're going to have to, prepare all of that, but they're happy with it. And so every single component of the meal plan is tailored to you, to your fitness goals, to the way that you like to eat. The ingredients we give you, again, we give you shopping lists. We tell you quantities that you need to buy, every last little thing, so you don't have to think about it. And we typically give you a new meal plan every 2 weeks as well. It's not just, here's one meal plan, kind of you're stuck with it, that's it. No, it's constantly refreshed to keep it nice and interesting. In terms of ADHD management, through that first pillar, we want to stabilize blood sugar levels. We don't do too well with too much ultra-processed food in our diet. Too much carbohydrates in our diet isn't too good either. So when we're creating your meal plan, we'll design it so that it reflects that. Essentially, certain foods will spike your blood sugar levels, have you crashing, then you're feeling, more lethargic, and that's just harder to get things done. As well as that, we address supplements. We share the studies that exist in terms of ADHD, managing ADHD with supplements. We prefer to take care of the big boulders, which is, again, the exercise, the nutrition, eating properly, whole foods, healthy foods, sleep, the mind. Supplements definitely has its place, but we don't it's not a thing where we're going to tell you to buy a laundry list of supplements. Now, sleep. There is a huge correlation between people who have ADHD and having some sort of issue with sleep, and this was me. My sleep was terrible for many, many years, from a really young age, Typically, I see there's kind of 3 buckets. There are people who struggle to fall asleep because their brain's just racing. It takes them ages to fall asleep. Typical kind of ADHD brain. Then you've got the individuals who struggle to stay asleep. And then you've got individuals who just struggle to put down the devices at the right time to get the right opportunity to sleep. And so we help our clients across the board with those. Again, it used to take me 1 to 2 hours on most nights to fall asleep. Now it takes me 10 to 15 minutes to fall asleep, which is awesome. For someone who maybe, some of you watching this will kind of be lucky and you don't have an issue with that, you fall asleep quite quickly. 10 to 15 minutes might sound long, but for my other group of kind of friends, if you're coming from 1 to 2 hours, it's awesome, right? So, and again, a lot of people with ADHD tend to self-medicate, and they might be using alcohol, weed, or sleeping pills in order to help them sleep, but none of those are actually sleep enhancers. They actually affect the quality of your sleep. And if your sleep isn't where it should be, your ADHD symptoms are going to be exacerbated. Less focus, less executive functioning, more struggle with impulsivity, emotional regulation, you name it. So very important component. We look at your environment. We tell you how to set things up in your physical environment. We help you set up your digital environment in a way that doesn't require you to always use willpower to put things down. It just makes life a lot easier because things are on autopilot. So that's awesome. We sort out your circadian rhythm, and again, sleep environment optimization. And finally, the mind. This has actually become the most important component of what we do. There's so much that we do here, but some of the stuff that we do is, the very first thing is we take you through what's called a heaven and hell task. So this is essentially a life audit that we do. And this has quite honestly changed my life. I did this for the very first time probably about 10 years ago, if not more. And we've taken clients through this, and it's been a huge game changer. The best way I can describe this is, that feeling where, we procrastinate on certain things, and then last minute, we've got a deadline and we just it's crunch time, and so we, get more done in 24 hours than we, many people do in, however long. This is very similar. We are artificially creating that intensity so that you understand what are the impacts of the actions that you're making so far by procrastinating on exercise, by, eating the way you're eating, or not having the structure, right? Or yeah. Some people it's a struggle because they eat too much. Other people it's like they don't eat and then they end up binge eating later on. There's just so many ways that it shows up and looks, and we've got experience across the board. So just, there are certain, like ADHD, of course it's not our fault, right? But we do have the responsibility to make the changes so that things aren't as bad as they can be, right? And so this is what this exercise does. It goes, what are the things that we do have control over? What are the actions and habits that we have in place currently that are not conducive to the life and the person that we want to be in terms of our physical state and other areas as well, in your business, in your career, whatever it might be, in your family? How are you showing up? And what's going to happen in the next 5, 10, 20, 30 years time if we do not change? Another thing that we do is a dopamine detox. Dopamine hits we like to categorize them into 3 buckets. You've got your level 1s, your level 2s, and your level 3s. Your level 1s are your cheap forms of dopamine. Think social media, notifications, pornography, sugar, fast food. There's a whole list of things that fall under your level 1s. Again, very big dopamine here, very little effort to actually do them. On the opposite end of the spectrum, you've got your level 3s. Your level 3s are things that require effort, but also give you a dopamine hit. So think exercise, think building meaningful relationships, work, passion projects, reading, even doing like housework, right? Like all of these things can give you a dopamine hit, but if you are overly saturating yourself through these level 1s and level 2s are things that might seem productive, but aren't actually that productive. For example, watching YouTube videos, educational YouTube videos, but not taking any action on it. Endlessly organizing folders and planning things and researching things, but not taking any action on it. Watching too much news. All of these things fall under level 2s. And so again, if we are overly kind of indulging in those level 1s and level 2s, you're going to find it very hard to extract dopamine from those level 3s, right? To get that positive feedback loop, to keep you engaged and want to keep doing those. So this is a 30-day thing that we do, again, fairly early in the program. And what that does is it just naturally pulls you towards wanting to do those level 3s, which is awesome. We've had clients, when in this part of the program, complete things that they have been putting off for years. It's incredible. So this is a more micro intense kind of burst that we do with the dopamine detox. And then once we've done the 30-day detox, we then do take a more macro approach at managing and be more productive and doing the things that we want to do by going back to the heaven and hell task. And then finally, one of the other things that we do is we improve focus and impulse control training. So literally your ability to be doing a certain task, notice a distraction, and keep yourself back in so that you can execute and finish things sooner. I'll mention one more thing that we do within the mind pillar that can be quite common amongst people with ADHD, and it's negative self-talk. Whether it be from a really self-deprecating, harsh language side of things, or for some other people it's more limiting beliefs, doubting whether you are actually going to succeed at this or something else, right? Whatever it may be, but there's just a lot of doubt. And so regardless of what shade that negative self-talk is, this is so important that we address, because the more negative self-talk exists in your head, the more self-sabotaging behaviors will show up, and you'll continue to create these self-sabotaging behaviors, and that then creates more negative self-talk, and it continues to spiral constantly. And so we have to change the direction of this negative spiral, because at the end of the day, you can follow a training program from wherever. You can follow a nutrition protocol from wherever. But all of these things are external actions, right? It all stems from within. So you are at the center of that, right? You are the one doing all these actions. And unless you do not change the person, the lens in which you see yourself, the lens in which you see the world around you, all of those actions are going to feel incongruent. They're going to feel like you're constantly swimming against the tide. And so it is so important that we address this. This is why the mind pillar has become such an important component of what it is that we do here. Finally, the accountability. So the way we've kind of differentiated this to make it even more applicable for people with ADHD is you will not be coached by just one coach. You'll have two coaches in your corner. So for every client, you'll have two coaches. The reason we do this is I've got friends and acquaintances in the industry, and I get to kind of see how they set up their business as online fitness and health coaches. And what I've noticed, it was very common to have one call a week with all your clients. And then it dropped down to one call every 2 weeks was very common, right? So you'd hold your clients accountable through messaging, and then the calls went from one call a week to one call every 2 weeks. And then I've even heard one call a month is common now as well. So the check-ins are happening. You're having these conversations with these people are having their conversation with their clients once a month, once every 4 weeks. And all the accountability outside of that is done through messaging and checking forms. We as people with ADHD do really well if we know we have someone to answer to, right? Where someone is holding us accountable. And so you are going to have two people in your corner to make sure you're doing the things that you need to, and that we're making the internal changes to make this sustainable long term. So what that looks like is every week you have one call a week, one-to-one with your coach. And every other week you'll have a second call. That goes from 2 calls a week. In the very first week, you'll have 2 separate calls. And then the next week you'll have 1. The following week you'll have 2. And it will alternate between 2 and 1 throughout the whole 16-week period. Now, quick caveat for those of you who are super busy, very crazy busy, entrepreneurs, busy professionals, who, doing 2 calls a week on this particular part of your life isn't feasible. No problem. We can obviously keep it to 1 call a week, but this is the standard way that we do it. There are kind of adjustments. No part of this program is cookie cutter or, the same. Like, we constantly tailor every component of what we do for our clients and their individual setup and life and schedule. So that's the program, that's the Whealth protocol. I'm going to go into some of the cost of inaction. So some of you might be thinking, well, I've lived with this my whole life. I've managed, I'm doing all right? And to be fair, you have been. You've built career, you've handled responsibilities, you found ways to make it work. But that doesn't mean it's not costing you, right? It's easy to write it off as just how you are or just being a bit distracted. But when left unmanaged, the costs show up across your entire life. And so there are a few studies that kind of look at this. There's much more than this, but these are just a few to mention. So the first one, which is quite shocking, is the life expectancy gap. So research by Dr. Russell Barkley showed that unmanaged ADHD is one of the most significant predictors for reduced life expectancy. Unmanaged symptoms can slash up to 13 years of your life. This reduction is primarily driven to impaired behavioral inhibition, which leads to poor health-related choices, i.e. with poor diet, lack of exercise, smoking, and other risky driving and other risky behavior as well. The second is the ADHD tax on your career and finances. So research shows that adults with ADHD consistently earn less over a lifetime compared to their peers. And this isn't due to a lack of intelligence or ambition, but due to the inconsistent performance, missed opportunities, and difficulty sustaining output. It also shows up in day-to-day financial behavior, impulsive spending, avoidance of financial admin, and short-term decision-making creates ongoing, often unnoticed financial drain. The third is substance use and self-regulation. Individuals with ADHD are at a higher risk of substance misuse. This is often linked to attempts to self-regulate and or a cheap dopamine hit. And as we're all aware, while these may offer a short-term relief, they tend to further destabilize mood, focus, and overall functioning over time. None of this is coming from a place of judgment. I know I've been there, and again, a lot of people with ADHD have been there. So this is something we help quite a lot of clients with. The final is relationships and social friction. So unmanaged ADHD is associated with higher rates of relationship dissatisfaction and breakdown. Challenges with attention, emotional regulation, and consistency can create ongoing friction in personal relationships. Over time, this can erode trust and increase conflict. So what exactly happens when these systems are applied properly? And the change isn't just physical, right? You've seen the before and afters. It's also how you operate day to day. Instead of your habits feeling chaotic and inconsistent, they become structured and repeatable. Your energy stabilizes, and so you're not constantly relying on motivation to get through the day. Your focus improves because your brain is in a better state to perform, and your training, nutrition stop being reactive and start becoming consistent. But more importantly than that, you stop feeling like you're constantly falling short of your own standards, and that is what allows everything else to click. You have more energy, you can actually follow through on things that you know that you should be doing. Your habits stop collapsing every few weeks, and the same standards you're holding yourself in your career start to show up in your health. You're no longer trying to manage ADHD through willpower alone. You're supporting it through physiology and structure. So who tends to get the best results? Number one is people who have already pushed forward in their career, but they know that their health and habits haven't kept up. People who have tried starting and stopping and want something that actually holds, right? You're tired of, starting, doing it for 2 weeks and then giving up. You want to cut that cycle out. This is for you. People who value structure and accountability. If you don't value structure and accountability, and again, with regards to structure, it's a bit of a paradox, right? Because it's like, we like novelty, we like spontaneity as people with ADHD, but if we don't have the structure, we don't function very well. So it's getting that right balance. And that is the case across with the training, the nutrition, every component of that. Even, for example, with the meal plan, sometimes people might get a little bit worried. It's like, but even whilst you're on the meal plan, if there's something that you don't fancy on there, if you get invited out to a restaurant, if you're going to do something that doesn't reflect what's on the meal plan, we'll tell you how to handle those situations to deal with real life scenarios. Or, for example, we can be forgetful sometimes as people with ADHD. We might prepare our meals and we forget our food, right? We'll teach you how to handle those situations so you're not messing up in the moment and also not spiraling. And then finally, people who are ready to take ownership and finally close the gap between what they're capable of and how they're actually living. So the next steps are, if you've watched to this end and you can see yourself in anything that I've said so far, the next step is to apply for a strategy call with our team. This is where we'll look at your current situation, understand where things are breaking down, and determine whether the system is a right fit for you. On that call, we'll assess your current habits, structure, and challenges, look at how ADHD is affecting your energy, focus, and consistency, and map out what would actually need to change for you to get results. If it's a good fit, we're going to invite you in to join the program. And if it's not, we'll try to point you in the right direction. We'll see you on the inside. Peace.